Given that this country and the world have recently surpassed painful milestones in coronavirus deaths, 500,000 and 2.5 million respectively, may we take a deep breath and join in a moment of silence as we stand with all who grieve across this planet. Thank you. Geoffrey Tristram, a brother at Society of St. John the Evangelist, shared a story about Jane, a member of his congregation when he was a parish priest in England. She was a remarkable woman with great faith, but had suffered so much over the past years as her husband struggled with cancer. She was brave, courageous, resilient, but it was clear the light had gone out of her life. On one New Year's Day, she came up to him in church and said, "Geoffrey, I've made a New Year's resolution, or rather a New Year's prayer." He remembered thinking, "Oh good, maybe she's going to travel or get a new job." "No," she said, "not that. I'm going to ask God for joy again in my life. I want the gift of joy." He had never had anyone say that to him before, but recounted that God did answer her prayer. As the year went on, he saw her come alive again. God gave her the gift of joy. It was beautiful to see. He shared this story in a sermon on Philippians, a letter which he describes as infused with joy. Rejoice in the Lord always. I say rejoice. What's amazing about this letter of joy is that it was written by Paul from prison. In the midst of great suffering and possible death, here's Paul absolutely overflowing with joy, writing, "I am constantly praying with joy in every one of my prayers for you all. Yes, I will continue to rejoice. I rejoice greatly in the Lord." Brother Tristram asks, how could he be so joyful when his outward circumstances were so dire? This all resonated with me this week as I was thinking about our friend Peter in today's gospel. After Jesus speaks of entering into this great landscape of suffering, Peter takes Jesus aside and, it says, rebukes him for being so dark and gloomy. It is as though Peter is attempting to intervene with his version of a self-help program. "Don't talk of such things, Jesus. Look on the bright side, Jesus. Try to be positive, Jesus." But if joy is birthed in hardship, was Peter obstructing joy and settling for happiness? Was Peter hoping for happiness? Clearly, joy is not the same as happiness. Happiness is triggered externally when things are going well, when life is good, when everything is going your way. But joy comes from within. You can know joy even in the most challenging of circumstances, like perhaps found in the readings today. A 90-year-old woman becoming pregnant, and a 99-year-old man reinventing himself and starting a new generation. Don't you love that phrase? He was almost already dead. Starting a new vision at 99. Have you ever noticed that happiness is never listed as a gift of the Spirit? Joy is. Happiness may be possible when there is no struggle, but joy seems to hide within the struggle. Jesus said in John 16:20, "You will have pain, but your pain will turn into joy, and no one will ever take your joy from you." That's a promise. The joy God longs to give us cannot be taken away by any external circumstances, however dire. God longs to give us the gift of joy. So how do we receive this joy? I suggest 3 things. Remember, rely, and reimagine. I would say the first thing is to take some time and remember moments of joy and understand how and where it arose in your life. My earliest memory of joy was playing with a friend on the frozen lawn of my childhood home. It happened on a cold, gray day in Colorado, when it suddenly began to snow for the first time in a year. We both began to do cartwheels and leap for joy and wildly run around the yard. I think snow meant Christmas. And I think Christmas meant, well, Christmas. That moment catalyzed an intense anticipation of grace, bathed in all the sensual joys that were to come. There was an assurance that this joy was already there and was to come, and it came from something much larger than anything I could conjure up. This joy was not of my doing. It resulted from a rhythm outside of my control, just as the first snow happens when it happens. Joy arrived in the gray and bitter cold of a depressing November in Colorado. It became a benchmark for me of the true nature of joy. Joy is not happiness. Joy is an immense awareness of the gift of life, the presence of something bigger than myself, that intended good for me. There have been other times of profound joy in my life, like being a dad, marrying my best friend, and forsaking a successful business to immerse myself in a life of service. Such times were filled with an awareness of some higher miraculous power at work. Such moments did not make life safer. It amplified my vulnerability, while also reminded me of who I was and who I was becoming. Remembering moments of joy can remind us that pursuing human manipulated happiness is a low bar and doesn't really last. One could go so far as to suggest that it is possible to be happy while also being entirely joyless, because joy emerges from within, while happiness is something dependent on external realities. Remember joy, but also rely on it. The letter to the Romans today says that the promise we seek must rest or rely on grace. Grace cannot be manipulated, earned, or controlled. It can only be welcomed and relied upon. Paul writes, "Don't worry about anything, but pray about everything with thanksgiving." Give it to God in prayer. Finally, reimagine. Paul writes, "Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, think about these things." This call to step back and look at the narratives we hold for ourselves need to be continually re-examined. Happiness is not a narrative that works. It often ignores our true selves and keeps us from a truly joyful path. Black History Month can be a challenge for me as a white male because it really challenges me to re-examine my tendency to seek happiness over joy. Happiness for me can mean that everyone just gets along. Tension, disagreement, or unrest make me unhappy. I don't want to go there. As a person of privilege, I don't have to go there because I can escape into my privilege. I have the option to choose an easy path, a gated community, a safer neighborhood. The system works fine for me. Like Peter, I can take Jesus aside and say, "It doesn't have to be that hard, Jesus." I make this satanic argument from a place of privilege, seeking happiness over joy. I can happily go on with my life. Maybe, somewhat. But joy is found in being who God intended me to be. Joy is found in that high calling that is willing to journey into the struggles and the risks that I know require grace because they are beyond my ability to manage. Remember, rely, reimagine, and rejoice because Peter, who wants to eliminate the challenge and struggle, also eliminates the end of that sentence that Jesus utters, which is that after the suffering and rejection and death, he will rise on the third day. You can't get to the rising bit without the other bits. And this call to follow Jesus means letting go of your ego and moving with God through the challenges before us, knowing that it's not all in our hands. And knowing that can bring a whole lot of joy. I like the way the brother puts it. Happiness is triggered by the external events of the day, but joy, I think, at least for him, comes when it makes peace with who he is and makes peace with why he is. Folks, we are all pushed to the limit during these times, but in some way it's an opportunity to let go of our compulsion to make ourselves and others happy, and instead realize, as the prayer goes, that as we change the things we can change, there are many things we cannot change. Therein lies the opportunity to give those things to God. That trust and reliance leads to the realization that God is with us and will not only help us through, but bring us the joy of becoming who we are in God's grace. Some of you have asked me to repeat the meditation, the hand meditation that I taught a few weeks back. We have been teaching it to the children this week. Keller and I have met with many of the children in our new program for young families. And the prayer simply is a liturgical ritual act that you can connect your heart to, involving six movements: a fist surrounded by your hand, open hands, hands moving forward, open hands again to receive something new, placing it in your heart, and giving thanks. As we think about this reading today and our compulsion to seek happiness over seeking a journey to joy, may we imagine those things that seem out of our control, those things that keep us up at night, the worries, the anxieties, the people we're concerned about, the things that we're angry about. May we offer those to God. May we look at them in God's sight. And may we push them towards God, making our hands available to receive more than happiness, helping us to receive joy. Joy, the joy of being who we are called to be. And may we place that in our hearts and give God thanks. Amen.